Hello, everybody. It's Peter. Peter with an I, S-T-A-W-A-R-T. And welcome to segment 37 of...
I don't know, the Dark Tower, I guess?
After the security guard had passed, 3 sets of eyes embedded in the wall opened. When the security guard went back into his office, the moving bodies against the granite were like figures depicted in 3D computer-generated posters. When Nancy, Frank, and Joe got to the staircase, they hid in an alcove long enough to turn their jumpsuits inside out and redo their makeup. When they came out, they were striped black and white like jailbirds. And when they walked up the stairs, they fit right in. They walked under one of the surveillance cameras of the main floor. From inside the security office, the black and white monitors didn't show anything out of the ordinary, besides the stairs, which looked like they had become poorly crafted escalators. The security guard didn't notice it. He didn't even look at the monitors. They could have filmed an episode of Jerry Springer in the landing of the staircase, and the security guard wouldn't have spotted it. Once up on the top floor, it was difficult to tell if there was anybody in the office because, throughout the building, there were some lights that always stayed on, for security reasons. It was the middle of the night, and the only people who might have been there were the janitors. Nancy pulled out the forged keys, the ones she'd made by dripping the metal from the melting soldering wire into the dried clay template molds. It was relatively easy to tell which key fit into the door handle because of the shape. She turned the forged key easily, twisting the knob simultaneously as not to put extra stress on the alloy, which had the consistency of a hardened Tootsie Roll. It worked! They crept through the waiting room. The office seemed so different at night, not so much because the lights were turned low, but more so because she had always seen it occupied with people. Nancy had never seen it so deserted before, and it gave her a feeling similar to that of walking the halls of her old school during the summer. The office wasn't used to having people in there after hours. Nancy pulled out the plans she had drawn using the dentist's own surveillance tape. They knew they could talk, but they decided to whisper and use a lot of hand signals nonetheless as they crawled just out of the known scope of the cameras. The cameras might pick up the bottoms of feet that couldn't escape the outermost periphery of the camera range, or the tops of their backs as they crawled on their hands and knees. But this wouldn't provide any usable footage. Nancy had fast-forwarded through most of the dentist's tape and found nothing. But she had to wonder why he would have his own cameras, and why they weren't just wired down to the main security office. Nancy fast-forwarded through most of the dentist's tape and found nothing. Was there something he was doing up there that he didn't want people to see? Nancy knew where the invisible laser passed. Lasers had become very popular, not only for intruder detection, they had also become popular with the highway patrol. Officers would pull people over for speeding, and instead of shining a strong flashlight in their eyes, they would use a laser to study their pupils, to make sure they weren't dilated. Even if they hadn't been drinking, the blinded drivers would end up in the ditch miles down the road. And they would get a ticket anyway, because it's illegal to drive off the road and crash. If you're lucky, your car will burst into flames, and the cops won't risk getting close enough to give you a ticket. And even if they did, the ticket would burn up, along with you and everything else. As Frank and Joe ducked underneath the laser beams, Nancy sprayed a fine mist into the air with her water bottle, and it glowed bright red. The purpose of the water bottle was twofold. It could be used to illuminate the laser beam, and, if the lights went on and they were discovered, Nancy could use it as a prop to pretend they were janitors. She also had a dirty grandfather pipe in her pocket to explain the charcoal face paint. Frank and Joe could claim they had been smoking firecrackers disguised as cigars. They passed the pictures of the people with horrified looks on their faces. The pictures seemed to take on a life of their own. They all seemed to be afraid of something in the office. All of the faces on the side of the hallway were turned to the right, in the direction the kids were walking, like they were cringing from a terror that was invisible to Nancy, Frank, and Joe. Nancy assumed it was a coincidence that they were looking in that direction, because the dentist always gunned his chainsaw to the right. But the faces on the other side of the hallway were facing left, like the photographs had turned their heads. Nancy figured the little trick the dentist used with the chainsaw wasn't just done on a whim. He must have been plotting in his head how the photographs would look on the wall from the start. Little did they realize the photographs of scared faces were nothing compared to his opus. They followed the hallway and came to a door Nancy had never been through before. She grasped the handle and turned it. The room was dark, but they instantly noted the smell of rotten meat. Frank and Joe took a few steps inside as Nancy searched for the light switch along the wall. Frank put his hand on something in the darkness, which rested on a plate. He couldn't figure out what it was, so he picked the plate up in order to keep Joe from knocking it over before the lights were switched on. When the lights finally did pop on, what Nancy saw turned her blood cold. There, sitting on the counter, were tall piles of files, documents, and stat printouts that had yet to be put away. It was a huge amount of work that would take forever to do. All the work she had done in that office was merely a process of catching up, and this was the stack that had been generated while she was busy doing that. It was like lines in busy theme parks, which doesn't appear to be long because the serpentine winds through a long maze. The plate Frank was holding in his hand had a smelly roast beef sandwich on it. He grunted his pleasure and took a bite. It was old, the mayonnaise had turned clear, and the beef was questionable, but it was pretty good. "What do we have here?" asked Joe. It was a mosaic, which looked like it was made with popcorn. After a closer look, he found the eggshell white kernels were the tops of human teeth. The image was shocking when they realized what it was. It was like that comical greeting card with a window on the front. Through the window, there's a photograph of a voluptuous breast. But when the card is opened, the bust that was so arousing turns out to be the buttocks of a man cradled in a bra. The mental picture confuses male viewers. Their mind unwillingly associates arousal with the buttocks of another man, and the situation spirals out of control.
Ooh, yummy!
200 or 300 teeth had already been set into the ceramic palette with a type of cement paste. Picking it up to study it, the kids found it was a building tile. On the back, scribbled in blue chloride chalk, was Level 57, East Face, Row 12, Tile number 1886. The inscription would have been meaningless if not for the blueprints clamped onto the drafting desk nearby, which depicted the outside of the clinic, the main tower. The tile before them was suited for the east face. They didn't need to open any of the boxes that were stacked one on top of the other to know what they were. They read Level 57, East Face, Row 11, Tiles 300 through 349. Level 57, East Face, Row 11, Tiles 350 through 399, and so on. It was breathtaking. They marveled at how many teeth had been gathered to make enough to cover the entire top of the building, and wondered how long it would take to finish the project and cover all 60 floors of the tower. It'd be nice if you could find your own teeth, Nancy.